There is one number, a single measurement, that predicts your chances of dying in the next decade better than your blood pressure, better than your cholesterol, better than whether or not you smoke. Most doctors never test for it. Most people have never heard of it. And the exercise that moves this number is not the one fitness influencers are selling you. A study following 122,000 people over decades found that those with the lowest scores on this measurement were 5 times more likely to die than those with the highest scores. 5 times. That is not a small difference. That is the difference between a life that ends at 65 and one that runs well past 85. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what this number is, how yours likely compares right now, and the precise exercise protocol that will start moving it in the right direction, without a gym, without expensive equipment, and without running yourself into the ground. Welcome to Second Prime, where we translate the latest longevity science into practical steps for living longer, stronger, and sharper after 50. The number is called VO2 max, and it measures the maximum amount of oxygen your body can use during intense exercise. It is the gold standard of cardiorespiratory fitness, and it tells scientists more about your future health than almost any other single metric. Think of it this way. Every cell in your body runs on energy. That energy requires oxygen. The more oxygen your heart, lungs, and muscles can process per minute, the more resilient your entire system is to disease, to aging, to stress. VO2 max is not just a fitness number. It is a measurement of your body's engine capacity. And after the age of 50, that engine starts losing about 10% of its power every decade, whether you exercise or not. Now, here is the data that should change how you think about your health entirely. In 2018, researchers at the Cleveland Clinic published a study of 122,007 adults who underwent treadmill fitness testing. The results were staggering. The group with the lowest VO2 max had a mortality rate nearly 5 times higher than the group with the highest fitness. To put that in perspective, smokers had a mortality rate just 1.4 times higher than non-smokers. People with established heart disease had a mortality rate 1.3 times higher than healthy adults. Low cardiorespiratory fitness was deadlier than both, combined. The lead researcher, cardiologist Dr. Wale Jaber, called the finding extraordinary. He said he had never seen a variable with this magnitude of effect on survival. Not smoking, not hypertension, not diabetes, low fitness. That is the most dangerous condition in America, and almost no one is talking about it. So, what actually happens to your VO2 max as you age? And more importantly, what can you do about it? After 50, VO2 max declines for reasons that compound on each other. Your heart pumps slightly less blood per beat. Your lung tissue becomes less elastic. Your muscles have fewer mitochondria, the tiny organelles that convert oxygen into usable energy, and those mitochondria that remain become less efficient. According to research published in Cell Metabolism, this mitochondrial decline is the root cause of most age-related metabolic disease, not just reduced fitness, but rising blood sugar, cognitive decline, and fatigue. The good news is that mitochondria are uniquely responsive to training stimulus at any age. A comprehensive meta-analysis of older adults over 60 found that 20 weeks of the right aerobic exercise produced an average 16% improvement in VO2 max. That is not a marginal gain. That is the biological equivalent of knocking years off your cardiovascular age. And the right exercise is Zone 2 training. Not walking, though walking is better than nothing. Not HIIT, which is too intense for daily use and too hard on aging joints. Zone 2 is the intensity where you are working aerobically, breathing noticeably more than at rest, but you can still hold a conversation. It feels almost too easy. That is intentional. At this intensity, your body preferentially fuels itself with fat, burns almost no glucose, and, crucially, activates the specific signaling pathways that trigger the construction of new mitochondria. Dr. Íñigo San Millán, one of the world's leading exercise physiologists at the University of Colorado, has spent decades studying elite athletes and metabolically ill patients. His conclusion: Zone 2 is the single most powerful exercise intensity for driving mitochondrial biogenesis, improving fat oxidation, and lowering metabolic disease risk. And it works at 50, 60, and 70, just as effectively as it does at 30. So how do you find your Zone 2 without a lab test or expensive equipment? 3 methods, any of which works. First, the talk test. You should be able to speak in full sentences, not single words, not complete comfort, but sentences, while you exercise. The moment you cannot finish a sentence without pausing to breathe, you have crossed out of Zone 2. Second, heart rate. A rough formula is 180 minus your age. At 55, that gives you a Zone 2 ceiling of around 125 beats per minute. This is a starting point. Adjust based on how the effort actually feels. Third, nasal breathing. If you can breathe exclusively through your nose while exercising, you are likely in Zone 2. The moment you need to open your mouth is roughly the boundary. Any one of these methods is accurate enough to start. The goal is not perfection, it is consistency. Now for the actual protocol. Research and Dr. Peter Attia's clinical work both point to the same target. 4 sessions of Zone 2 per week, each lasting 45 minutes minimum. That is 3 hours of Zone 2 weekly as the optimal dose for real mitochondrial adaptation. If you are starting from 0, begin with 3 sessions of 30 minutes, walking briskly, cycling gently, swimming slowly, or using any cardio machine at low resistance. The activity does not matter. The intensity does. After 4 weeks at 30 minutes, extend to 45. After another 4 weeks, add the 4th session. The single most important rule: keep the intensity lower than feels productive. Most people who try Zone 2 go too hard. If you feel like you are barely exercising, you are probably doing it right. Zone 2 builds your aerobic base, the foundation. But to accelerate your VO2 max gains, you add one element on top: high-intensity intervals, once or twice per week. Peter Attia calls these Zone 5 efforts. These are short bursts, 4 minutes of hard work followed by 4 minutes of rest, repeated 4 times. That is 16 minutes of real effort once a week. The purpose is different from Zone 2. These intervals stress your cardiovascular ceiling and force adaptations that Zone 2 alone cannot reach. Together, 80% Zone 2 and 20% high intensity is the most evidence-backed formula for rapid, sustained VO2 max improvement. The same ratio used by elite endurance athletes and now validated in aging adult populations by research published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine. But start with Zone 2 for the first 4 weeks before adding any intervals. The base matters first. Let us put this in perspective with one more data point. Each increase of 1 MET, 1 unit of cardiorespiratory fitness, is associated with an 11